I talked with Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan yesterday about that and other issues. And one of the things I asked him about was, in this abnormal year, what advice would you give to teammates who may be wrestling with a question that we've seen so many already resolve with a decision to opt out? What would you say to your teammates who are considering that same path? Here's Matt Ryan from yesterday.
Well, I think everybody's circumstances are different, right? And you have to do what's best for yourself and for your family and your loved ones around you. And I think that, if you're around people who are at risk, I'd encourage you to really think long and hard about it. But for me specifically, I feel like I'm in a situation where, my day-to-day is not surrounded by people who are at high risk, and we're able to kind of, bubble our little world and make sure that, we're being as safe as possible. So I feel comfortable, coming in and getting ready to start this season.
For the first time since your last year at Boston College, no preseason games. How different will this year be for you than all of your other NFL seasons as you prepare for week one without the benefit of going through the motions? Even if you don't play in a preseason game, you go through the motions, you go to the locker room, you get your uniform on, you get used to how it's going to be. How different will it be without that this year?
Yeah, I think, it will be different. I kind of like the preseason games to be able to get out there and knock off some of that, rust that you have, to be able to, go through it. Like you said, go through your routine, make sure that, you're doing the things you need to do and you kind of have things ironed out. We're not going to have that luxury. But, I think Dan Quinn is putting together a really good schedule for us to try and, simulate as much as we can on our own, what that experience is going to be like. And, I think it's more important for a guy like me. I'm in year 13. I think it's going to be easier for a guy like myself, having been through so many different situations, so many years, so many, games played and feeling comfortable in those. But for our rookies and for our young guys who have not had that experience, I think we've got to help them out as much as we can and try and make them feel as comfortable as possible, because when we kick it off against Seattle week one, that game is just as important as week 17, and it means just as much.
This season is going to present plenty of advantages and disadvantages, but it's got to be an advantage to have a starting quarterback with the same team, not changing teams like a Tom Brady in Tampa, but you're with the same team. You've been there. It's got to make it so much easier to get ready for the season without the benefit of a preseason.
I'd like to think so. I think having the same coordinator, a lot of continuity within the building, all of those things make going through experiences like this that are unique. It makes it easier because, you have that foundation built with these guys where you understand how to work with each other. And I think that's going to benefit us. I really hope it benefits us and it gives us some kind of advantage.
The full Matt Ryan interview available at the PFTPM podcast. And Chris, we've talked about this a few times. The Falcons finished last year 6-2. Usually that's the kind of team that we keep our eyes on for the possibility they can build on. They went to San Francisco and beat the 49ers in a game that the 49ers very much needed down the stretch. And all the talk about the Buccaneers and the Saints and Tom Brady and Drew Brees, this sets up perfectly for the Falcons to come in and stun people and be that team that's off the radar, that while the Buccaneers and the Saints are cannibalizing each other in week one, the Falcons get off to a good start. Now they play the Seahawks, so it's going to be tough to go 1-0. But, if the Falcons could knock off the Seahawks out of the gates, we see that every year. There's some outcome the first week of the season that makes us say, holy crap. I'm not going to overlook the Falcons this year.
No, I don't think we should. You explained all the right reasons, and don't overlook them in week one. I mean, Dan Quinn, he came from Seattle. Nobody knows that team and what they do better than him. So, and I think the big thing is what? I mean, the damn team in Atlanta is talented. Talent has not been the issue the last 2 years. It's been surviving the injury bug. I mean, they've just been absolutely ravaged by it. So that's been the biggest issue. And, you look at it from there and, a lot of things that jump out to me there. But certainly, their defense, Grady Jarrett, Dante Fowler Jr. there. We know the linebackers, Keanu O'Neal, hopefully he's healthy. The offense, the receivers, Todd Gurley, can he help out? I mean, there's a lot of things to like about this football team. And they got a lot of carryover. There's not a lot of new pieces. They got some young guys in the offensive line they got to develop. But I'm with you, Mike. This is one of those teams that's, totally under the radar. Just sitting there, and a lot of talent on the football team, and a team that, I don't think the COVID-19 year is going to affect them as much as maybe, like you said in the interview, the Bucs and anything like that. So I'm with you. I think they can be dangerous. And, the last thing too, preseason football, people I think are making a little bigger of a deal than I think there should be. I understand it's important, but it's more important for some of the back end guys. For a guy like Matt Ryan, he kind of just talked about it. It's like important for him because, hey, he wants to go out and just like go through the rehearsal a little bit, play a few series and get out. That's all he cares about. It's not about like, oh, I need to play and do all that. But the last few years in the NFL, preseason football, nobody freaking plays anymore. I mean, the starters play such limited reps that it's hard to get a feel for teams from what you see in the preseason and then like try to evaluate and say, oh, I saw this in the preseason and that'll carry over to the regular season. There was a time when that was real. Now I don't think so. And so I don't know if it's going to change things a whole lot as far as football, regular season football is concerned this year.
All right, Matt Ryan was also asked the question of whether he would take a Super Bowl ring or a Hall of Fame bust. I've heard players over the years address that. Some say definitely Hall of Fame bust. Some say Super Bowl ring. Matt Ryan really stopped and gave it some thought, and I think he came up with kind of a loophole. In his mind, you go for the Super Bowl ring because that is more likely to lead to the Hall of Fame
jacket.
Bust.
Right.
Hall of Fame bust isn't going to get you a Super Bowl ring. So I like that. I like that way to navigate through the dilemma and find a way to basically say both without saying both.
Yeah, well, exactly, though. But I think that was when I saw the question posed here on our little document that we have, and I hadn't heard his answer, I thought, I'd want the Super Bowl ring. More likely, if you've had a pretty good career and then get the Super Bowl, you'll end up in the Hall of Fame. But all these guys are playing for Super Bowl rings. They are. And that's a special thing to have. I mean, damn. When my dad brings out his 2 Super Bowl rings I'm still like a kid in a candy store when I see them. I'm just like, oh my gosh, look at these things. This is so cool. I mean, so it's a special thing. And, of course, be able to say you're the champion and the best in the world at what you do is also special to any competitor.
But here's the thing. There are plenty of guys who never actually played in a game, regular season or postseason, who have Super Bowl rings. There are plenty of people who never put on a helmet other than part of a Halloween costume who have Super Bowl rings. So I think it's what it signifies.
Right.
But still, if you're Matt Ryan and you have a Super Bowl ring, it's not going to be because you're working as a scout for the Falcons. You've earned it as the starting quarterback. So it signifies so much more to him. And I think it makes sense because, look, even though there are so many other factors that go into it. I mean, look at his 2016 season. He's the regular season MVP. He did everything he could to set the table for the Falcons to win Super Bowl 51. They were up 28-3. And then the defense fell apart. Now, look, there were some issues with the offense down the stretch when it came to holding the lead. But still, as we list the people responsible for that disaster for the Falcons, Matt Ryan is fairly far down on the list of people responsible for blowing the 28-3 lead. So he did everything he could. He put all the hay in the barn, and then somebody threw a cigarette in there.
Yeah.
And so here's the question.
Yeah.
Is what he did in 2016 more impressive than Eli Manning and his 2 Super Bowl MVPs that capped seasons where, it was almost like a Slumdog Millionaire vibe. Things fell together just right for the Giants, and everything worked, and it clicked, and Eli Manning makes a couple of throws for the ages. What's more impressive, what Ryan did in 2016 or what Eli did in 2007 and 2011?
Wow. I mean, what Ryan did was, he was a machine that year. He really was. Now, he had Kyle Shanahan with him and, of course, talent around him, and there was a lot of plays served up on a silver platter to go like, hey, here's Julio Jones. He's wide open over the middle for a 20-yard gain. Nobody's around him. If you can just hit him, it's a first down. And there was a lot of that. It was impressive. I think I would go with Eli Manning, though. I think I would. There's something to be said about the biggest game, the biggest moment of your life coming through in that moment, and especially an Eli Manning situation coming against the freaking undefeated New England Patriots and then having to deal with the Patriots again and being on your own 2-yard line and the Mario Manningham throw and all that. So, hey, listen, we could sit here and argue that Eli probably didn't deserve the first MVP. I mean, I think Michael Strahan or Justin Tuck or somebody like that probably should have got it. But regardless, I think, coming back against that Patriots team, some of those big throws and that big play to David Tyree and all that, yeah, I think I'd probably favor the Eli Manning thing over the Matt Ryan.
Yeah, week in and week out, the Matt Ryan 2016 season more impressive, but there's something about emerging with the Super Bowl MVP award, especially doing it twice. And you ask anybody that wins the regular season MVP over the past 20 years, because not since Kurt Warner has there been a double regular season MVP, Super Bowl MVP. For 20 years, the regular season MVP has not won the Super Bowl.
It's crazy.
And every one of those guys would tell you, my season was not a success. Who cares about the regular season MVP? I wanted that Super Bowl ring. That's what they all want. That's why they do it. That's the motivation. And Matt Ryan still has that motivation. And maybe, look, in this crazy, hey, we talked earlier about it, Chris. They've got a setup at training camp where they have individual townhomes where guys have their own bathrooms. They have their own changing area. To the extent that guys need to feel comfortable this year, they're going to feel comfortable in the Falcons facility, and that goes a long way toward keeping your guys healthy, keeping your guys focused. If these other teams are in disarray, if these other teams have a bunch of guys who are on the COVID-19 list, it's going to make it easier for the Falcons to win games.
No doubt. I mean, yeah, it looks like they got a formula that's going to keep their players safe and on the field and things like that, to where maybe they won't be ravished by the virus and everything there. So that's going to be part of the game this year. And, you heard Matt Ryan in your interview there, too, talk about, I go home, but we've created our own little bubble within our personal life. To me, that is going to be the great importance that I hope the Matt Ryans and the Grady Jarreds of the world for each team continue to preach that to the guys in their locker room. Like, hey, I mean, do you want a Super Bowl ring this year? Do you want that, a few $1 million worth of checks you're going to get this year? Okay, well, go home and do the right damn thing. Like, make sure, yeah, okay, I understand your kids and your wife and everything aren't just going to sit there and wait for you to get home, but make sure they're around people you trust and, don't have the branches and tentacles reaching out into society. I think that's going to be a big part. I mean, I know my wife and I, we've had this conversation a lot lately where we're just sitting around and spitballing and whatever, and we put ourselves in this situation. And she was just like, oh, I mean, if you were making like quarterback money and doing that and still playing, I would never leave the house. We might not send the kids to school. We might just stay in the house and you go to football and come home and do all that. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's the kind of thing that you'd probably have to do if you want to be successful.
All right, we need to take a break. Coming up, the next team on our preseason power rankings, the New York Jets. Sam Darnold says he has a lot more confidence this year. And there's plenty of ghost gifts that have been posted on Twitter in response to that comment from Sam Darnold. We'll be talking more about the 2020 Jets when PFT Live continues right after this.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.